This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lance. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, please leave us reviews. We love reviews. We'd prefer you drink along with us in a safe place, no drinking and driving, and then leave us a review. I'd like drunk reviews. That's what would make me happy. Inebriated reviews of the podcast. If you have an author you'd like to have on the podcast, or you are an author that would like to be on the podcast, feel free to email us at drinkingwithauthors@gmail.com. And our sponsor today is Skunk Brothers Spirits. DWA10 is the coupon code. Look, I remembered all of it at the beginning of the episode. Go me! I have a post-it. Okay, so my amazing co-host today is C.R. Rice. Woo! And our guest for the second time on this podcast is the incomparable Beth Patterson. Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. So, from some DWA swag, I am drinking with Tanqueray gin. I decided to mention the gin this time too. So I found this thing called Owen's Craft Mixers, which is mint, cucumber, and lime. So you basically have the soda water with all of that in there. And it's kind of my new favorite thing. So it's amazing. So it's a gin and tonic, but I don't have to put any effort into it. CR, what are you drinking today?
I am still on my pestilence, so I have my green tea and vodka, and I actually heated up the green tea a little bit because, like, I know when you weren't feeling good, like, you were just like, oh, it's going to clear me out, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of sniffly still, so I heated up. It's weird. It definitely changed the profile altogether.
Yeah, I was talking about doing hot toddies with whiskey and lemon.
I mean, it's basically the same
thing. No,
thing.
it's not the same thing.
Same thing. I will say it's strangely good.
I believe you, but that's bizarre, and please, we don't encourage that. Okay, Beth, what are you drinking, my friend?
I brought, since I said I was going to do what was on the bottle, I brought this in my suitcase several time zones. This is a Zinfandel called Freak Show, and I figured since it was just fitting, and there was a time that I just was like, when people said, women buy wine for the labels on them. I was like, that's bullshit. And then here I go.
You found a really cool label and then you bought it.
Well, I do like Freak Show, actually. I like this particular make. And since one of my newest and most bizarre books is an anthology that I edited called Unicorns versus Clowns in Hell, there is a reason behind that. It's kind of bizarre, but so I thought I would kill the freak show today.
I love it, and I love the bottle, so it's totally fine. I buy, you know what, honestly, because I've realized I'm not a fancy wine drinker. I will never be that person. Like, my go-to is 19 Crimes because it's always the same consistency.
It's good stuff.
It is. So I do buy by the bottle, like the label. I'll look at it and I'm like, if it's a kind of wine I like, I'll be like, let's try this. Like, I don't know how to tell what the hell I like. So
do you have the app that
oh yeah, that has the talking bottles? 19 Crimes, there's an app and the labels talk to you and tell you what their crimes were.
This is why.
Really?
Yeah. This
I'm
is
gonna write that down.
Many reasons why I don't recommend alcohol and edibles at the same time. I'm just saying.
Having that app.
Hashtag, that's another health warning of the day. Don't do those things.
But yeah, like I like, some of the best stuff is a really cheap Malbec it's surprisingly good.
Yes.
Malbec you can find at a gas station or something, or a nice Spanish Monastrell, but this, I figured there's a lot of really bizarre stuff that I have to talk about today with what I have written. So, part of this not only was just the wicked looking art and my newest fascination of the subgenre circus punk, but I thought, nearly everything I have to talk about is a freak show. So I'm totally hitting this.
Love it. I love it. I love it. And
It seems super fun.
Cheers.
I love that
So
sound. You know, that first,
for
besides
those
the top of
people
the
living
chord.
under a rock that don't know you, you are a woman of many, many talents. Many.
Aw.
Because we're going to talk about your writing, but you are also a writer of songs
Mm-hmm.
and you're a performer and you're on tour right now. That's the cool thing. You're coming to us on tour, which we're lucky to have your time for that. So let's talk a little bit about everything that is Beth Patterson.
Well, as far as the stuff that I care to repeat, I always had a fascination with writing, and various and sundry things sort of got me discouraged young, as unfortunately is the case for a lot of people who want to entertain some notion, and the wrong person will say that's boring, and so we shelve it for a while. And I just mentioned this on my Facebook music/writing page, that it was about 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. I decided, you know what, I really, really, really want to start writing, and so I just kind of picked up those old ambitions. Even at some point, resurrected this god awful book that I wrote when I was in the 6th grade. It was so bad that I was like, there's some of this that's actually kind of so bad that it's awesome. And I resurrected it and I put it together. I turned it into a very deliberate Frankenstein's monster of a story, and it ended up being one of my most successful ones.
Well,
Uh,
and I think that's because it's different and it's not the status quo. I
yeah,
think that's amazing.
yeah.
I
And
gotta say that would be both painful and wonderful to see. Like to find a random box that has those things that you wrote in 6th grade and pull it out and be like, oh my God. And then take that and turn it into something. That's super fun.
I think lately, I have been laughing at myself an awful lot as I've gone back and touched on some things to write about that touch on old ambitions, wishes that I'm really lucky were never granted, and things like that. And it's like, wow, this is something that I wanted, and just having a great old time laughing at myself. And I think that's important, because then you can fully embrace it.
Yeah.
As long as nobody got hurt in the process, it's something that you can absolutely embrace. So I did music as a full-time job, and just since I started college, I kind of put myself supplementing my income as I was working through my music therapy degree, with my main instrument being the oboe, and I was going out and playing at the Irish pubs, and just did a various and sundry things, playing bass with a Latin band, or revisiting my prog rock ambitions, things like that. So my favorite little joke, I'm probably the only one who thinks it's funny, is that if I don't make it as a writer, at least I have my music to fall back on.
It is
I
kind
mean,
of
that's
funny.
different.
It is. First of all, the fact that you started with an oboe. So I just,
That's what made me stop. I was like, wait a second. Most of the time, people in music therapy, they're like violin, piano, guitar. And she's like, no, I'm going oboe.
No, actually, that was not quite my idea. I'm the offspring of two academics, and when the time came to say, "What do you want to play when you're in band?" I was thinking the baritone. My dad was a baritone player. I kind of liked the bigger instruments, something that had something to say, and my parents were both, "Oh no, we can't have Beth playing a non-symphonic instrument," and so I was on the oboe, and I found out that I could get as good of a scholarship as a mediocre oboe player, as I could if I had been a top-notch flute player or whatever. And that was my first real lesson in musical prostitution.
I like that musical prostitution. Let's
Because
talk more about musical prostitution.
I'm
You need
still,
to bring that saying back. Please tell
I,
me you have a sticker made that says I'm a musical prostitute.
well, it's the first time I actually heard it, was a friend of mine who's actually done quite well for himself. He is from Georgia, and we're talking Tbilisi, Georgia, not Atlanta, Georgia. He's from Tbilisi. Came to the States at a time that it was not in the best interests of one's personal safety to be caught playing jazz in Tbilisi.
Ah,
So yeah, so he came to the States, did some incredible things. Won a Grammy recently for his engineering of gosh, it was Jean Baptiste,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and he's done like right before Rupert Neve, who was just one of the people who made the recording industry what it is today. Because before he came along, we did not have recording consoles or anything like that. So I saw some of his Rupert Neve's earliest works, that things that looked like they were made from range top stoves and bureau drawers, because they were. And so before Rupert Neve died, like there's Misha, this guy's name is Misha Katkachishvili. He is very good bass player, Misha Katkachishvili. And he,
Say that 5 times fast.
yeah, well, it's only because I saw him around quite a bit. So he was playing bass where I was playing the bouzouki. And this was in the 90s. And I was sitting up at the bar with my best friend. And Misha comes over, he goes, "What do you think of this band, No Doubt?" And I was like, "Yeah, I like him, sure." He's like, "They're musical prostitution." I'm
I
probably
love
butchering his accent because I tend to parrot whatever accent I heard last. So I might be trying to sound Georgian, and I might end up sounding Central American, just because I was in Guatemala last year, so I might have this mishmash of accents. But yes, he said musical prostitution.
Oh my
I
God.
like it.
I love that.
I was like,
So,
that's me. When I play oboe, I am musical prostitute. I get out knife. I make reed. I'm plotting your demise.
oh my God. I'm telling you, I feel like you should have a shirt. You should have a set of shirts. You have some of the funniest sayings. You truly do. But you should have a shirt that says I'm a musical prostitute. I think that was brilliant, and I would buy one in a heartbeat.
I'll make you
Unfortunately,
one.
yeah, unfortunately, because of the way that the music industry goes, um, it would be misinterpreted a lot by a lot of the clientele.
Oh,
I mean, just showing up practically wearing a sackcloth, and here I am, almost 50 years old, and I still have to be on the defense all the time. So, just because most places, in most venues, you can't get past a lot of people who have this "look me at the chick" kind of mentality. So
that
I,
is
I
so
hate, yeah,
it's so ridiculous. It really is in this day and age. But again, nothing should surprise me in 2022, I should say,
yep.
because things keep happening that I'm like, there's no way that's going to happen. Then it happens, and I'm like, what the actual fuck is going on?
Erica, stop saying that. The thought that you're thinking this
I'm
is
going to,
causing,
because I'm going to be like, no, that can happen. That could absolutely happen. And
yeah, yeah. Let's,
crazy.
yeah.
That's why I don't leave my house. You always making fun of me because I never leave my house. But you know what doesn't happen at my house? The craziness outside.
Yep.
That's true. That's true.
And
Okay, so let's talk about when because you've been on before. Let's talk about your recent stuff.
let's see. I've got all kinds of stuff. The last time I was here, I had my novel, The Wild Harmonic, and I had been in I think I was featuring an anthology called Banned, as in Banned. That was all about horror stories in the music industry. I'm like, oh, I got this. The thing is, I had to put a paranormal spin on it. The paranormal spin was less horrifying than some of the real life stuff that I've had to deal with on gigs, but it was good therapy to get out like all these things that I wish really happened to people on gigs. But
Yeah.
anyway, the two most recent things that I have all kinds of things. The ones that I sent you photos of.
Yes.
I got a call from a couple of friends of mine, Dave Green and Tim Mendes. That one is based in Ireland, one is based in the UK, and they had this thing for it was a Lovecraft, the sort of Lovecraft world. But are you guys familiar with the British comedy movie series called the Carry On films?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's
I'm
some
gonna put it
people
on my list though.
are not. Yeah, I was not totally familiar with it until, I mean, I was somewhat aware of it, but not, I had not been immersed in it until they said, what we want is Lovecraft's world in the style of the Carry On films. So, there has to be all this sexual innuendo. They basically said, keep it fun, because I agree that a lot of the best humor is not what's being said, it's what's not being said. And that's not just in writing, but, just things that are implied, like some of those Chuck Jones cartoons. You see where Yosemite Sam he's a knight and Bugs Bunny's in the castle and he's trying to vault himself over the ramparts. And instead of seeing him get splattered, what you see is Bugs Bunny kind of leaning out, from the behind. You can see him kind of leaning, looking over the edge, and you see one brick come in. And what's funnier is what's implied and not what's actually seen. And I think that works really well with the written word and humor. And so when they said, don't say fuck when you can say rumpy pumpy. So I was like, ooh, this is going to be fun. So we were trying to get permission from the Carry On films to call it Carry On Cthulhu. And I don't think they heard one way or the other whether or not they could say this. So the backup title was The Nookie-Nomicon.
I think that is a brilliant
That's
title.
awesome.
Better than the Carry On. I'm just sorry. Nookie-Nomicon is a brilliant title.
I was not complaining. I know that that's what the editors really had their hearts set on, so I was hoping for their sake, but I certainly had no complaints. So I had a lot of fun writing this because I just how do I put this? A former bandmate of mine who had twin sons said, "Beth, you have the sense of humor of an 11-year-old boy," and she did not mean it as a compliment. I took it as a compliment anyway. I just took it around. I just turned it around and owned it. I said, "Hey, thank you."
Yeah, no, I constantly tell people that I am like a 14-year-old boy most of the time. My humor is very crass. I talk like a sailor all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sex jokes are hysterical. So
yeah. Well, the thing is, when I play music, I have this other sort of side hustle. And for a while I was keeping these two personalities separate and distinct. Part social experiment and part because I wanted my serious music to be kept seriously. And then my humor, like I wanted a platform for it. So I called that this alternate persona, Bad Beth and Beyond. And all of my adult life is long blonde hair. So I put on a short black wig. And one day I went out just to go see some friends play. And I had some shades and I had the short black wig on. Nobody recognized me. I would look right at my friends, and if they said anything to me, I was like, I'm from France. I very much I love this jazz. I first time in Nouvelle Orleans, and people are like, oh, welcome to New Orleans, baby. I was like, you asshole, you're never that nice to me. So
that's amazing.
So it was fun to kind of do it through the Bad Beth and Beyond, So like, if I want to break the ice, I usually start out with a love song called "Show Me on the Doll." That's when I'm in the Bad Beth and Beyond mode. So the title of my chapter in the Nookie-Nomicon is called Lady Chatterley's Blowhole.
Okay. All right. I like it.
You need a title that gets people's attention.
I 100% agree. My book titles are completely based on getting people's attention.
Yeah.
So do you do a lot of anthologies? Do you only do anthologies?
No, I did one novel and I was working on a sequel, and a couple of things happened that kind of derailed my enthusiasm. I started working with somebody who said, would you object to doing some rewrites if it will be a stronger book? And I was not opposed to putting in the work if the end result was going to be a better book. However, it was very clear from the get-go that I was like, oh, this is not my book anymore. And it really felt violated, and long story short, this never came to pass. Several things that were initially unfortunate happened that, in the end, the good news is all the rights reverted back to me, and I did not have to do this because I was not liking this. But it got, for a while, I just didn't want to write anything. And so I got back into it with anthologies, and now I've got two novels that are half finished. And I basically said, I'm not going to do any more anthologies anymore. I'm going to really focus on these books now. And now I have to, keep that promise to myself. So that I happen to have, just because I was posing with a bunch of books on top of me last night, pretending to be drunk. This was I actually, that wasn't far off because I just played at a cidery up the street, a place called Hawk Knob Cidery. Um, Bear with me, I have raging ADHD, so my train of thought has no caboose. But they were doing,
We
they
love
had
it.
done a live stream from a with a previous musician, and it was being live streamed through Twitch. Twitch automatically censors something, so it automatically censored knob. However, it wasn't K asterisk, with four asterisks. It was just four asterisks. So people were like, Hawk, what? So people are trying to figure out what four-letter word was being censored.
I love that.
So I came back from Hawk Knob, and I just happened to have all these books with me that I was going to talk about, and this was my first and only existing novel before I really knew anything about how to write a novel. And at the time, looking back on it, I realized I was writing it like a lyricist. I had only been writing for a couple of years, and I realize now, I was like, oh man, would you stop with the imagery and just cut to the chase? But it's, it is from a musical point of view, so it's got a do-it-yourself playlist in the back. And I am going to get back to its sequel, which largely takes place in Australia. And it's going to be called The Earth's Chorus. That's the working title anyway. So this is my one existing full-length novel.
That's awesome.
And yeah, so the anthologies were fun. It was like, ooh, shiny, and I'd submit to this.
She has the weirdest internet. She's probably going to be back in just a second. She moved to the mountains, and so like she'll be perfectly fine, and then all of a sudden she'll just disappear.
Yeah. I wish I could do that in real life, like a lot.
Right? Yeah, like have that magical ability, and it's like, oh no, gone.
Yeah. I on a gig I was recently cornered by somebody that jumping off, I could have jumped off the stage and just run, except that he was blocking my way with his wheelchair, and there was nothing that I could do to have a proper escape route that wasn't going to look like a hate crime. And
I was just thinking that. I'm like, okay, look, you could flip the chair. Nope, can't do that.
Yeah,
it's like, you could just roll him backwards. Nope, can't do that.
No, you can't do that. So I'm like, okay, now what do I do? As he's going into every detail about every single patch that he had on his hat and the meaning behind them. And I just desperately want to, thinking, I wonder if I start just a small fire, just a little one, with that.
What I tend to do with like people corner me is like I always have this it's an app on the phone, it's called Double Click. And so like if you go and you can set it so like you hit your power button like 2 or 3 times and it automatically makes your phone ring. And I'm like, oh no, I have to take this. I am so sorry. I'll be right back. And then I like sidestep and I just keep going. I'll fake a conversation to like get out of eyesight.
That's brilliant. I did try to fake a phone call. I was trying to get off the stage and somebody hugged me before I was ready. I had one foot that was still balanced. So my torso hit the wedge monitor, my ankle twisted, and then everybody like got over me and started talking above my head as if I hadn't just fallen. And I'm like, guys. And so I started trying to back up. And so I said, oh, I have to take this call. And as soon as I said, I have to take this call, they all zoomed in on me and started talking at me while I was pretending to take a call. All of a sudden, everybody.
Oh gosh, no.
Yeah.
No, see, that would make me so claustrophobic.
It's why I start to get bitey, and it's also why I drink. And basically, there's one person that I'm who might be at an upcoming event, and I am just going to tell some of the staff people, okay, if this person gets within 6 feet of me, throw a net, just throw a cap, a weighted net, Just, nothing too harsh, just a little net ought to do it, but just
A shock one, just a small little shock one, not like an electrocuting one, but like, those little zap zap ones.
no,
I would do that.
just something with little lead weights on it. You don't necessarily have to
Ooh,
catch alligators or crabs in them, just something to slow down the process enough time for me to beat a hasty retreat.
you're braver than I am. I couldn't imagine that. That would be a lot.
Yeah.
So, did you like writing anthologies versus the books? Do you find it to be a different writing method? Like,
Um,
I mean, you write so much. You do your lyrics, you do anthologies, and you do your own novel. There has to be a huge diversity between all of that.
there is, and I'm learning exactly how much diversity there is because with lyrics don't have to make sense. You can be pretty abstract. I mean, look at some of your favorite songs or anybody out there who's watching this podcast. If you go back and look at, these don't have to have a plot. They are snapshots of a certain emotion. They don't even necessarily have to make sense. I mean, like one of my favorite bands is Yes. I know, and those are like tone poems, as far as some of John Anderson's lyrics go. And so it's still coming out of that and realizing, that I read a lot of books, but just because I read a lot of books doesn't mean that I have necessarily internalized the formula, for things,
Right.
for character development and stuff like that. So my first gasp at the Wild Harmonic was just an entropic mess. And my friends Jody Lynn Nye and Bill Fawcett helped me rein it into something that had some sort of a structure. And when it was over and done, and I was kind of telling Jody, yeah, I just didn't know what I was doing. I was flying by the seat of my pants. It was just about to go off into a parallel universe if it hadn't been for you guys and this and that. And it's still kind of entropic. And Jody very kindly said, it's jazz. I'm like, it is jazz. And since I love jazz and my husband is a jazz piano player, I took it very much in the spirit that it was offered.
That's pretty cool.
And
It's really neat way to look at it.
yeah, but there's a whole lot. Of course, it's not just the fact that there's a higher word count, because there's some people who find a limit of word counts that's a hindrance when they're writing short stories because they have so much to say. So it's hard sometimes to chop 2,000 words, which sometimes will make it almost always if somebody says, can you cut it by 2,000 words? And it's like, oh, guess what? This is now a tighter story.
Yeah.
So the word count notwithstanding, it's more of a commitment, of course. There has to be more stuff going on. There has to be more failures and attempts and betrayals and things like that. And short stories, you have to get a lot in a shorter amount of time. So there's a different set. Each has its own set of hindrances. And this is coming from somebody who wrote one book. But that's
Sorry, I disappeared. I'm having a delightful time. I'm getting my computer replaced. The network card keeps flipping out and being like, there's no internet. And I'm like, but there really is. So I had to go grab a laptop and load it up. And anyway, okay.
Yes.
I think we're ready for a break, right? We're break time? Okay,
Yes.
We'll be right back with Drinking with Authors.
Sample locally sourced, quality distilled spirits in the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. At Skunk Brothers Distillery, we're family owned, brewing small batch grain to bottle spirits, just like our grandfather did back in the Prohibition era. From handcrafted bourbons and moonshine to flavored blends and cordials infused with local fruit. Join us for a tasting tour and buy Skunk Brothers spirits straight from the source.
It's all in the family at Skunk Brothers Spirits, located in Stevenson, Washington.
Pour yourself more. Let's have more drinks. I like more drinks.
I was gonna surreptitiously pour myself another while things weren't going. And part
You
of this
could
is
pour
because
another anyway. People are drinking along with you, so
Well,
it's good.
I am also the clumsiest person I know. In fact, I'm pretty convinced that my last words are going to be whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh, that's okay. You have a stem on your wine glass. I'm not allowed to have stemmed wine glasses in the house.
Mhm.
I have a few, mainly plastic tumblers. I brought this up when I've drunk wine. Like I pour it in and it looks all crystalline. it's plastic. And so my friends just bought me as a housewarming present. Apparently they were hunting down Pottery Barn because they had this stemware that has a skeletal hand on the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have some of those.
Yeah, and they found me the ones that don't have stems, because there's ones that have like the arm and like this whole thing, but they don't know. And I was like, wow, these are amazing. And I love them. I love them. Thank you, Tommy and Robert. But they're going to be for very special occasions, because otherwise I won't have them very long.
Well, I have the plastic versions because it's Halloween now. You can find them everywhere. Like I have some that looks like a metal hand and it's a plastic glass, because you know me, I'm not allowed to have anything but my metal. So like I got those, but I will say you can drop the hell out of those and those things are still kicking.
Wow. See, because I'm a guest in someone else's house, I went to where the cabinet was that had all the glasses. I'm like, what do they have the most of? You know, what looks the most expendable, in case I should have a moment where somebody screams Mazel Tov. You know,
I love everything about that. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not holding this by the stem because I don't trust myself.
Yeah. Ditto. Don't trust myself either. So let's talk a little bit about these two books you have up and coming. Did we already talk about that and I missed it?
Well, we talked about the Nookie Nomicon, and then I talked to CR.
Oh, let's share this book, and then I want to talk about the two novels you're working on. Unicorns versus Clowns in Hell. I love them.
Yeah. It's just it came several years ago. I got pretty darn sick, and this was not, this was pre-pandemic. It was just a common cold, I think, but it was a pretty nasty common cold. And I was whacked out on cold medicine. I was trying to be productive anyway. I was lying in bed just, and I had like a little writing journal by my side just whenever I get random things. And I don't know, I was just trying to scribble. I think I had a fever. And in the morning, I noticed that I had written Unicorns versus Clowns in Hell. And for some reason, this struck me as really funny. And I even had sort of a plot going on, because apparently, so many people are scared of clowns, but apparently I had these things that the clowns are in hell because like nobody likes them because everybody's scared of them, and the unicorns are a bunch of assholes. And I think I'd named the clowns, they all had clown names that were based on Aussie slang names like Yabo, and things like that mean nothing here in the States, but are put downs. And so I shelved that for a while. I was like, haha, I think I even mentioned it to Bill, my friend Bill Fawcett. And usually when I hit on something that's either is actually successful, or at least depending on your idea of successful, or wildly a terrible idea, Bill's response is, okay. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to entirely outrule this one just in case. And then last year I was talking to some friends who are actually not too far from my current location. They're in West Virginia, in Charleston. And I told them about my fever dream about, unicorns versus clowns in hell. And it was it was almost April Fool's Day. And I said, hey, you want to stage an April Fool's joke? And, we'll get you guys in on it. And we'll say this is an open call anthology on April 1st, and everybody will see, will obviously see when they, the requirements. Deadline is April 2nd. Minimum word count 70,000 words. Author compensation, Keith Richards' belly button lint. And thinking that surely everybody's going to know that this is an April Fool's joke, and we're like, no, and don't call me Shirley. So. So many people were genuinely disappointed that this wasn't really a thing, including my brother, who said, if you make this a thing, I will write the shit out of this. So they said, okay, if you really want to make it a thing, if you edit it, we'll make it a thing. And so not only did we make it a thing, but now they have started an entire versus series. My friend Tim Mindy's actually got his done before mine. His is Cthulhu versus the Musketeers in the Court of King Louis. Then I've got this. The next one out is like Ghosts versus the Loch Ness Monster in Atlantis. I think there's going to be Vampires versus Minotaurs on Broadway.
This is
octopods
brilliant.
versus mermaids in
That
space.
is so random and exciting at the same time. Like you're like, those don't match, but you kind of want to know what they're gonna do.
It's got the delightful randomness of Chuck Tingle. You know,
Yes, yes, it does.
it doesn't matter what it is as long as he gets pounded in the butt by it.
Yes.
In fact, as my Bad Beth and Beyond persona, I released a single only a couple of weeks ago that was supposed to be like this kind of funny little airhead pop song, but it's called I Want to Pound Chuck Tingle. So that's out there right now.
This is why you're so
right.
much fun. This
Yeah.
is literally why you're so much fun to have on the show.
Yeah.
I would like to be in your brain when you're like, I'm going to write a song called I'm going to pound Chuck Tingle.
It's the trouble is, you know, a lot of it is to keep a lot of toxic mental chatter at bay. There were times in my life that were less than ideal. And as a direct result, I have to quiet my mind a lot. And so I have to go to the ridiculous so that the less than lovely thoughts, so that there's no room for them. But, you know, sometimes I'll just have a very random thought and I'm like, okay, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I crack myself up. So let's go with this. So yeah, so this was the end result. I wasn't sure about the word count. So I threw in one of mine as well called Up and Away. And it's got a little hidden reference to anybody who knows some of the nastier, darker sides of the publishing industry, especially in sci-fi and fantasy. It's got some hidden Easter eggs in there.
Very fun.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Okay, but you are writing 2 novels now. So let's
Yes.
talk about that.
I've got one that was that's a sequel to the Wild Harmonic. The premise for the Wild Harmonic, it started with just the concept of, okay, you're supposed to write what you know. And at the time that I decided I want to be a writer, I didn't know very much outside of music. Like a couple of things. Okay, I know enough French to get around, and I used to ride horses, and I can Cajun dance, and that's it. And so I thought, okay, we'll start from the perspective of something that I'm already familiar with, which is what it is to be a working musician. And we're not talking the people who have the tour bus roll up and have the roadies take care of everything. We're talking about the people who have to haul their gear 6 blocks, you know, worry about their cars not getting towed, worried about people not spilling drinks on them, you know, and backstabbing bandmates, out of control audience members. You know, we're talking the real stuff, you know, and most people who are successful in this industry have had to pay their dues that way. And some of the stories are inflammatory, some are tragic, some are hilarious. So I wanted to write it from that point of view and hopefully get a few readers thinking, oh, maybe this is how we should not treat live musicians. You know,
Wait, are people mean to musicians?
Oh yeah.
What?
Oh yeah.
People are like mean when you have live musicians go out?
Oh, sweetheart.
Oh, cutesy heart. Yes. They're
it's
fucking
not-
terrible.
Why would you?
There's
I don't get why people would be so mean.
it's not that they think they're mean. There's a phenomenon that there's a thing that I coined, and if people want to use this along with musical prostitution, of course,
I
there's
want
a thing
that to happen. I'm going to get that shirt for you, Beth. Just,
Okay.
you know, I'm going to
Okay,
wear it
and
in
then
solidarity.
I will wear it for my friend Misha. I'll say, Misha, do you know why his one of his biggest regrets with me is that he taught me one word in Georgian, kveri, which means balls, and he won't teach me any more Georgian. But anyway, yeah, there's a phenomenon that I call sports mascot syndrome. And it goes back, you know, that you hear these stories about these people who, whether it's for high school, all the way through college or pro sports, you know, they're supposed to be embodying the other team. And people just lose their heads. They forget that there's a person in there. And I've read horror stories about people who get the crap kicked out of them because these overzealous fans, all they see is a big stuffed animal getting knocked around. They don't realize that this person's got a broken nose, broken ribs. Think people who have been put into serious danger and been injured because they forget there's a person in there. And I think especially now with movies and TV, even before the internet, people forget that, oh yeah, that's a person on the other side of that microphone, and you can cause serious injury. And over the years of playing music, like I was setting up one time, I mentioned this in my first novel. I'm setting up, and there's this person I've never seen in my life. I'm like, can I help you? And he throws his arms around me and he hoists me into the air. I'm like, what the fuck, dude? He was like, we're friends on Facebook. I'm like, okay, I don't know you, you know.
That's
so,
why everybody needs a Corey.
you know, I've had people take swings at me when I'm on stage. I've had people jump up and try to grab the microphone away from me. I've had people try to pull my instrument out of my hands. I've been groped. I've been swung at. Like I said, I've come home on more than one occasion with bruises. And the most disturbing thing is that they're on the wrong part of my hand, which means that I lose my head and forget how to actually throw a proper punch, which musicians should not have to learn, but here we are. Even in nicer scenarios, like I opened up for a Gaelic Storm one year on St. Patrick's Day, and it was a sit-down amphitheater gig. And so I got tickets that, you know, after I did my opening show, I could just sit in the audience and enjoy the main act. And I had to get backstage because I sat down and this guy next to me just tried to pull me onto his lap. I have permanent loss of the top and bottom end of my vocal range because on one occasion this drunk woman had received some it was very sad news, and I was sorry for her. I'd seen her around on gigs, but she threw herself onto me into this choking tackle hold, and I pulled her off of me, and then she threw herself on me again, hit me so hard in the windpipe that I lost everything but about 5 notes of my voice, and I had to just call the gig. But I was choking and I was waving for help because I thought if I defend myself the way I normally would, I could face serious legal repercussions for elderly abuse. And this woman is choking me. So I got her off me, and people are standing around like not knowing what to do. So about a week later, I recovered everything but the top end and the bottom end of my voice. And so there are certain notes I can't hit anymore. Yes, I had somebody try to force me at gunpoint to leave the stage and join him for a drink, which, let me tell you, that's a great way to pick up a chick. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that relationship lasted all of, you know.
Yeah, it's about as effective as that pickup line. Does this smell like chloroform to you? So yeah, I mean, it's made me a little bitey, and I want to be gracious to the people who have been supporting me for years, and there are people who I have come to think of as friends, and it's happened over years, and I wish, and they're lovely people, and I wish it hadn't taken that long to really warm up to the truly good people.
That's crazy. I would have never thought something like that.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is another reason that defends me staying home.
Yeah, you know, I'm a fan of it.
That's crazy.
I did not miss going out. I mean, during lockdown, my husband and I are both introverts. I mean, he is a true introvert. He will go into his office and write things, and I'll jokingly say, this is a day that I put you on a diet of pizza, pancakes, and flounder, which is basically anything I can slide under the door to remind him to eat. But yeah, I mean, I think of Neil Peart. My favorite band is Rush, you know, and his lyric, "I can't pretend a stranger is a long-awaited friend." And when I'm driving, I listen to a lot of his audiobooks, which gets me in the travel mode because a lot of it is travel logs. And then it's helped me understand more and more why he really doesn't, you know, never liked the meet and greets, and why they make him uncomfortable, and why adulation made him uncomfortable. It's like all these years later, I'm like, oh man, I get it. I totally get it.
No, and, you know, you have those experiences, and it's interesting because I think different creatives, you still can, you have, you know, we're not, as writers, we're not necessarily as out front as you are, but as writers, you can have really creepy things happen to you too, you know what I mean? And you do conventions, and you know, it's weird. So the moment you put yourself as a celebrity of any kind, like a person out in public, right, I'm using quotations, I think it definitely puts you in a position where anything can happen. And then as a musician, you're around a lot of people who are drinking generally for gigs, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Adding alcohol into the equation, which alcohol, we're a drinking show. We're all cheers, drinking, woo, but there's a time and a place and there's a line where you pass that line and you start just being an a-hole, and it's not fair to the people who are there giving you art.
Did you just say a-hole?
I know, she like bleeped herself.
I know, I don't know why I was censored there. I don't know why I censored myself.
Yeah, I'm like, it's okay. We're gonna get through this. We're gonna
we talked off the red. No.
We'll take a road trip, and we can let's take a road trip sometime, and we can judge each other's language behind the wheel.
Oh my God.
Oh no,
I would love
I'm bad.
to go on a road trip with you. I love road trips.
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing, seriously.
Yeah.
I am so road ragey. Like I get road rage at even if I'm not driving.
Yeah.
Like our road trips are very snappy.
I will not, I won't tailgate. I won't do anything. If I find myself feeling, the equivalent of stompy, I take a deep breath, but man, the things I say. Lately, I've been touring with a friend of mine named Sean Healy, who's this wonderful Scottish and Irish fiddle player, and he just thinks it's funny when I'm like, "Stay in your lane, SpongeBob fuck pants," and he just laughs. And
oh my God, it would be so much fun traveling the world with Erica and Beth. That would be ridiculous.
That would be exciting.
Record ourselves on the road. That would be.
That's
so
like a
much
TV
fun.
show that people would wait like all week for. They're like, all right, it's Thursday night. Let's go watch the Beth and Erica show.
Yeah.
Like, that would be exciting.
Yeah.
You pick one unlucky person to take a 2 or 3 day road trip with you, and then that would be awesome.
But or in some parts of the some demographics it'd be Erica. But this all actually does tie into the sequel, because it started making me think more and more about trolling, because I have that. I mean, when I first got my music page up, the very first visitor post on my music page of Facebook, somebody I didn't even know who wrote, "Totally trashy, you suck," and that was my very first. So I did what I was thinking of what Chris Rock said in one of his movies that it wasn't one of his stand-up things, but I think it was the movie, I forget what it's called, but he's running for president, and he said that in the Bugs Bunny cartoons, when Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny have a standoff, nothing makes Elmer Fudd more pissed off when Bugs Bunny just kisses him. And so I was like, oh, why, thank you. I didn't know what else to do. But I started thinking more and more, continuing about how not to treat musicians, and started thinking about trolling and thinking, okay, what if these people actually become trolls, but not in the way that we imagine trolls as being this somewhat disfigured, unseemly humanoids that live under a bridge or whatever. Instead of the features being grotesque, that the features start to get more neutral and blank, and people start becoming face blind to them, because the more effort you put into bringing somebody else down, the more of yourself you lose.
I love this idea.
I mean, I see it all the time on social media. It's like all these people have the energy to do is to go after somebody and put negative comments about something. And even if it's a sentiment that I inherently agree with, if it's done the wrong way, it makes me uncomfortable. Even if I agree with fundamentally what at stake, if every single thing is just going out against something, I don't think that kind of extremism, even if I agree with the fundamentals, is going to solve anything. And so my character struggles with this because she starts getting attacked, but when she's asked to describe them, she can't. She's like, I don't remember what they look like. That was something I sort of got the idea from somebody who had shown up on one of my gigs, whom I had considered a friend until things got weird, but was putting on, I think was trying to appear seductive, but it just looked like this, it was just this weird blank neutral face, and it just made me want to crawl out of my own skin. But it got me thinking, okay, that's not creepy. A menacing face, like to things like children, distorted faces are distressing when small children are trying to learn things about facial expressions. But there's something as adults that I wonder if the opposite thing happens with a loss of identity, blank masks. There's something about that that's equally distressing. So I started thinking that trolling can be taken almost literally, because you lose yourself in the process. And so my character has to deal with that, and some of the things like what makes people like that, and it ties into so many other things that I think are fundamental to what we think of as monsters, be they vampires, werewolves, or zombies. What do they all have in common is that they are infected. The other person is infected by a bite. And our struggle, these stories are about parallel what we have to do when we grow up and have to overcome trauma, is we have to make sure not to turn into the beast that bit us. We cannot become that monster that bit us. And I've seen that happen to people who did nurture versus nature. And then I've seen people who went through horrors that even if they were my stories for the telling, I wouldn't tell them, because you might be sorry if you knew. But these people have become the most loving, giving people who are constantly fighting the good fight. And, it just makes me wonder, why do some people just become so angry and lash out at everyone, and then other people decide, I'm going to break the cycle? And I wish I knew the answers. Even though I got my degree in music therapy, I'm so out of touch, especially because the doctrine of therapy and everything that we know about overall healing keeps changing. It keeps evolving. So there's a lot of psychology behind any kind of story that involves monsters.
I love that. I think that's brilliant. What is the other book about?
The other is something that's kind of a standalone, and I got the idea from a friend of mine who is a 7th generation circus performer. He lives in Guatemala. His family is all from Europe, but his family worked, like his grandfather and great uncle. He told me all these stories about his grandfather and great uncle working, the circus, in this traveling circus through Europe. And he got me turned on to a writer named Cherie Lamar, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. We're friends on Facebook, but I haven't actually spoken with her, who had sort of invented this subgenre called circus punk. And he had turned me on to a book that she wrote that's part memoirs, part stories, and it's kind of like how much of this is fiction and how much of it isn't. I got to stay with his family in Guatemala for about a week, and the more I got exposed to circus life, the less I'm sure where the line is between fiction and reality. But I started again because I have to have some roots in music, because, what am I going to do? Write about insurance sales? I have to write what I know. So I started thinking about a future in which live music is almost completely dead. It's dystopian, and it's not because some mean old dictator said, "We will have no more fun." It's because all the musicians, from all this abuse, that everybody just basically said, "Fuck a bunch of this. We're not doing this anymore." And all it takes is one generation to skip, one generation no longer to teach the next generation how to play music, the fundamentals, how to count, what the notes are, and most importantly, how to play together, how to watch for cues, starting and stopping together, everything that we take for granted. And so this heroine who wants to play music, and the only place where the performing arts are still kept alive is in the circus. And we're going back to the 19th century, and early 20th century, where, in big farming towns and things like that, that the basic ways that you could get entertainment was this sort of rolling zoo that had everything from dance and acrobats and animals and music. And that's the only place, once again, where the arts are still being preserved. And so it's kind of a dystopian circus punk, is, for lack of a better term.
I love it. I love new genres.
That sounds like a super exciting idea.
Yeah, I just got introduced to the genres of subgenres of hope punk and solar punk, because at a time that we're thinking of dystopia, we also need to very much be aware of how much better the world can be if we pull together. Because I think that's really important too, because if we're going to put that possibility of, okay, if we don't get our shit together, this is going to be our plight, we also need to balance it out with, hey, if we get our shit together, this could be something really cool.
That's very true. That's very true. I love your messaging too. And in exciting news, so we put out an anthology called Teen Angst, and we did our first one last year, and we were really excited, and it was submissions from people about what they were going through in their teenage years. And you submitted this year, which is coming out, which is super exciting.
When is it coming out?
Yes, you're actually the first story in it.
Yay!
Yes, so I'm super excited, and your message in that, I want people to pick it up because I think your message in that is very amazing, and that's the reason I put it at the beginning of the book, because I think, it was interesting because this year we had a lot of submissions from actual teenagers, right, that were going through stuff, which surprised me. It surprised me a lot, but it's as we get older, we sometimes forget what that's like, going through those times in our lives as a teenager, and how difficult it was navigating becoming an adult, and how that works and changes in friends. And, so I'm super excited that you're a part of that anthology too.
Thank you.
It's truly.
I wish I could find some of the stuff that I preserved, because I kept everything. I think it's important to save everything because you never know when you're gonna be able to borrow things, even if it's stuff that in hindsight you laugh at yourself, but it gives you like a little prompt. It gives you a little springboard. I never did find the lyrics that I wrote when I was 15 that I had the word peckerhead.
Well, as soon as you come across those, we're doing a Vol 3. We're going to need those for Vol 3.
Okay.
Peckerhead. I love
because I had a couple of things. I had one that I was thinking of. I had written some lyrics down, and it was around the time that Money for Nothing was a big hit. I'm like, oh, they're mentioning MTV. That's, so I was going to mention my local favorite radio station's call letters because, that's going to make me famous. This little Lafayette, hit radio in the 80s, because in my mind, that was all one and the same, that local notoriety was exactly the same as global notoriety. And I kind of almost wish I'd kept that mentality. I think it would have been a lot happier in some ways.
It's definitely interesting to watch, especially for children, as we grow up, the world get bigger. I think people don't realize that, but the world starts to get bigger and bigger as you grow up, but you're not paying attention that it gets bigger and bigger. It's just happening.
Well, there's a parallel, because I heard somewhere that we don't think in abstract. We can't truly see around the corner until we're about 11 or 12. I mean, I had sort of plans when I was little, but I wasn't thinking everything through. Like I had this plan because I thought diamonds were pretty. I didn't have any aspirations of getting rich, but it just, everything that I saw in fairy tales, you get this shiny. And where do you find diamonds? South Africa. Oh, okay. I'm going to go to South Africa and I'm going to end up there and I'm going to dig in the dirt and I'm going to find a shiny. Not knowing anything about how diamonds are cut. Certainly not knowing anything about how dangerous, how many people died in the diamond industry. I don't know that when I'm 3 and 4 years old, but I had a plan. I had a packet of carrot seeds and I planted them and I was going to grow these carrots, and then I was going to sell the carrots at a farmer's market, and then I was going to get some mode of transportation, like a scooter, and I was going to get like a little vinyl boat, and I was going to go as far as I could until I got to the coast, and then get in the boat, and somehow, with no natural disasters, I was going to end up in South Africa. Easy.
Of course you were. That was going to happen.
Easy.
So you can't, I had a plan, but you can't think really, you can't really see around the corner until you're about 11 or 12 and like, yeah, there are a lot of things that would be problematic about that.
Yes. No, it's true. It's interesting. I think they say as we like to get off topic. They say your analytical brain is not fully developed until you're around 25.
That would explain so much.
It does. And I always tell this, like I keep joking I'm going to write this book, but I seriously, it's on my to-do list, is how to raise your kid to not be an asshole. And part of it is remembering things like how a 5-year-old thinks. Like I see parents get mad at kids and I'm like, they're not thinking cause all the way effect. They're thinking this far. They've gotten this far. I'm going to get chocolate milk. Now, they don't realize that this and the glass and the, you know, how chocolate milk maybe comes into being in your house. Maybe you have to have Hershey's syrup, maybe use Nesquik, who the hell knows, right? But they're going to get chocolate milk. And then you have a shit show and you're like, why did you mess up the kitchen? Well, they were making chocolate milk, right? They didn't get to what it takes to make chocolate milk. I say this as the analogy, like the kids that tie a sheet around their thing and go jump off roofs and stuff like that. People are like, why did you do that? And I'm like, because the idea of gravity did not even occur to them. They were going to fly.
I think it comes from, but it also comes from the fact that everybody's always like, oh, it's a kid. You don't have to explain everything. Like when we had our, like, we always explained everything to him. I was like, look, you don't climb on top of the bookcase because like you see, you'll fall and it hurts. So we don't do that. Or like, you know, when you do these things, like people treat kids like they don't know anything. So instead of teaching them, they just leave them there. And then they're like, why don't you know this? It's like, well, if you would have just told them. It's very strange, but I agree. I feel like once I hit that 25, it was like a whole fucking world open. I'm like, holy shit, I was an idiot last week.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think of some of the lyrics that I wrote up until then, and where my style probably started to change. And you know, I mean, I don't have kids, at least you know, none that I'm aware of. It's so funny how many people like try to explain me when I make that joke. Like, we think you would be aware of this. I'm like, it's
sarcasm, ladies.
You can actually ferret out who should not be a friend of yours just by that.
Well,
like, once they start explaining it to you, you should be like off the friends list. Okay, next.
Yeah, well, there are several things that are just, I like to say, just see how people will react. Like if people talk about Jackass the movie, any one of those volumes, if anybody brings it up, I'm like, yes, because this gives me a chance to just go deadpan and just look them in the eye and say, honestly, the book was better.
I love that.
I like it.
I love that.
But yeah, I mean, kids, you know, it's one of the reasons why I wrote The Wild Harmonic, and while the sequel is also going to be in present tense, I know that present tense makes some readers' teeth itch. You know, and a lot of writers, it's not a favorite tense of a lot of people, and I understand. But because my character is a shapeshifter, the whole world of my book is that you don't know who might be a shapeshifter, and it's based on the sort of thing that if you ask most people, if you could be any animal, what would you be? Most people can tell you immediately. There's always a few animals that people can identify with, and I think I like animals better than I like most people. And animals think in present tense. They always think in present tense. I mean, some domesticated animals, of course, like dogs, will have trauma and things like that. But in the wild, a gazelle will narrowly miss the claws of a cheetah. And then once that cheetah is gone, the gazelle goes back to grazing. A mouse isn't sitting around worried about a cat if the cat's not in the room. And it's a way to think about, you know, it's a handy thing to think about when we're processing trauma. But also, like if a wolf is, you know, wandering around somewhere and he steps on a sharp piece of stone and cuts his paw, he doesn't spend all going, damn it, I shouldn't have stepped on that. You know, he moves on. You know, or if a hawk dives for a rabbit and misses, it doesn't sit around saying, you know, I should have been an owl instead. You know, there are a lot of things that human emotions that really get that really stuff us up in a lot of ways. And so one of the things that helped me sort of tap into a more animal mind is to write in present tense.
I think it's brilliant to write in present tense, and not a lot of authors can actually pull it off. And I think that's why some authors get fidgety about it, because it's kind of like writing in first person. Not a lot of authors actually pull off first person correctly.
It helps you keep your narrative. It helps you keep your story straight. It keeps you from head hopping. Same with present tense. That outruled a lot of things, especially for my skippy ADHD brain, by keeping it present tense and first person. But it also kind of kept me connected to how an animal might think, because as soon as my character shifts to the werewolf that she is, nothing has to change. That it's because there's a lot of the human mind that's still retained, because this person is not entirely a wolf. Instead of things being like people who almost like dissociative identity disorder, when people will have an episode and not remember anything, as a very profound and tragic and an astounding way of dissociating in order to protect the mind. That's how some people did it, like Hermann Hesse with Steppenwolf, that created a whole mythos that way. I mean, the legend of werewolves predated Hermann Hesse, but I wanted to shine a light on the fact that the most monstrous thing is that the werewolf is not half wolf, it's that it's half human. Animals just go about their business. A wolf doesn't kill because it's angry or because it's jealous. It kills because it needs to eat, and then when it's done, it's done. Try saying that about humans.
True.
Well, I kind of prefer that humans don't, kill people because they have to eat. But I mean, I prefer they don't do it at all. But like,
That's
the whole
true.
cannibalism thing.
You're not supposed to kill people.
No, it's kind of frowned upon, but
It is.
It's I'm just saying, if I were part of a Chilean soccer team and we crashed in the Andes, I would.
Shit happens.
The last, I would probably think about, okay, who is that person who said "eat me" right before we crashed?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly. I'm telling you, it's the moment any survival situation kicks in, I'm firmly convinced Lord of the Flies applies. That's just how that's got to go. Like,
or Cannibal the Musical. Are you guys familiar with this?
No.
Oh, I'm so happy. If I never do any other good deed in my life, I feel good that that I don't particularly consider myself a nice person, but I would like to spread this message. It was the first thing that Trey Parker and Matt Stone did when they were fresh out of college, before South Park.
Oh, wow.
Because if you get the special edition DVD, if you have any contraption that still plays DVDs, there is a commentary. It's a drunken commentary. So they just get drunker and drunker, and they talk about the movie and how they had a loan of like $250,000. Like $1 million is a low budget film. They had a loan of $250,000, and they got all their buddies from college to join in. And some of the people you might recognize in some of their other films, like Basketball, are in there. But it's based on the true story of Alfred Packard. Here we go. Here comes. Alfred Packer, who was the first person to be convicted of cannibalism in the United States. And I didn't realize how accurately they had recreated the courtroom scene where he's convicted and hauled off to the slammer, or how accurately the dress was. He looked like, made himself look like Alfred Packer. It said, no, this is not how it happened. And then they make up their own story, and it's done in the style of Oklahoma.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it is glorious, and it's done on a $250,000 budget. And if you can get the DVD, it's worth it to watch the drunken commentary.
I will. I'm going to check it out. I already know Chelsea's on the computer finding it. We're going to find it.
Yeah.
So
I am. I'm searching. I'm listening, I promise, but if I look off.
We have to wrap up this episode. So Beth, tell people how to find you the right way, not the creepy way.
Right, the right way. And I will never tell them how to find me the creepy way. That sometimes happens anyway. My website is bethpattersonmusic.com. My Facebook music page handle is Bethodist. And you really have to fight Facebook about this. Like, did you mean Methodist? And it'll say, no, I meant Bethodist, damn it. So if they try Bethodist, this is my own joke that I'm trying to start my own religion. And And I don't want to be worshipped. I just want the tax exemption. And my only rule is don't be douchebags to each other. So it's Bethodist, but if you try, Bethodist music or something, Bethodist, Beth Patterson music, it'll take you to my music page. Instagram is Bethodist Manifesto.
I love that. You are so much fun. I love having you on this show.
I was so glad when you guys asked me back.
Of course.
It's like I get to drink wine and talk about books and swear.
Yes.
All the swears.
All the swears.
And
okay.
Now that I found out that the Teen Angst is going to be when is it coming out?
It should be. You're going to get an email about it. It's on the production side, which I don't know all the. I just look pretty when it comes to saying things about the production
and you look very
side.
pretty.
So,
and I'm not just saying that because I'm on my third glass of wine. You know what they say, but
So it will come out soon though, and yes, and all the things, and you'll be able to promote it. But you have been fabulous. This has been Drinking with Authors. I have been your host, Erica Lance. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, now that we've all gotten drunk, review us. We appreciate it thoroughly. Our sponsor today has been Skunk Brothers Spirits. Coupon code DWA10 will get you 10% off. This brother-owned, veteran-owned, used to be a legal distillery, and because the grandfather did it when it was Prohibition. And my co-host today has been the amazing C.R. Rice. Our guest has been the literally infamous Beth Patterson, and we will see you guys next time.